It'll be a really valuable time for all of us. And the first thing that I'd like to ask you is if you could give me your name and maybe how long you've been dancing, and what you wanted to get out of today, if you don't mind sharing that with me. Okay, so I get to know you. So who wants to go first?
I'll go.
Okay.
I'm Fina. I have been dancing since I was 3.
Since you were what?
3 years old.
3 years.
So
Okay.
like forever.
Nice.
And I don't know, I just want to hear more about your story and
I'm Jackie. I've been dancing for about 6 years, and I'm looking for some advice for how to talk to people who are maybe having body issues or eating disorders, like how to help them through that.
Great. I can totally do that.
Hi, I'm Karina. I've been dancing for 11 years now. And sort of like Jackie, I'm just looking for ways to open up that conversation just because I've known people with disorders or eating disorders that are dancers, but I've never known how to approach talking to them about it.
Yeah.
Hi, I'm Madeline. I've been dancing since I was 3 also. And it's just an interesting topic that I want to learn more about.
Cool. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Robin. I've been dancing for about 14 years, and I think, yeah, the opening up conversations, like talk to people about eating disorders, I would like to like be more aware of that and how to do that, and then also just like help understand the intersection between like being healthy versus like yeah, being obsessive over health, and when that becomes like something that's good to keep us healthy and then something that becomes destructive.
Right. Where's that fine line?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Cool.
My name's Erica. I've been dancing really for like 10 weeks. And
Awesome.
and I think that this is something really important and think I want to have more of an awareness about it for just like the whole kind of being here as part of this campus to
Sure.
have an awareness with people I'm talking to and to know, yeah, what everyone's been saying, to know how to have a conversation about it.
Okay.
And I'm Tara. I think I started when I was like 4 or 5 dancing. A couple reasons. I'm studying nutrition here, so I've gotten to learn about some different types of eating disorders and how that relates to this in the dance world and and I think it's kind of echoing what they're saying, like how can we be a listening ear, or do we bring it up, or do we just let people come, or how do we engage people and just having that more awareness.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I'm really excited. I mean, I was excited before, but now I'm super excited because one of the things that I love teaching is how to bring it up in a way that is natural, that is compassionate, comes out of a place of "Are you okay?" and not "What is wrong with you?" Right? Because there's this huge difference between "What is wrong with you? What are you doing?" to "Are you okay? I'm seeing this and this. How can I help you?" So I guess I'll just use my story as a small platform, and then we'll jump into how to do those things. My story began, I was not a 3 or 4-year-old ballerina. I was 12 before I discovered classical ballet, and I was really narrow, tunnel visioned. When I saw a ballerina on stage, I was like, I want that. I just knew what I wanted to do, and they're like, oh, do some tap and jazz, and I'm like, no, I want to do that. So I did everything that I could from the age of 12, 13, 14 to train, and I was living out in the mountains in the country, so where the country, they don't have a lot of studios that have those kind of classes. So I moved up quickly. I had to go from my little downtown studio to big city studio to Baltimore, and commuting on the train every day. And this happened so fast. There's probably a 2-year period of time. I went from a beginner dancer to auditioning for pre-professional classical ballet schools. And I knew it was my natural gift to dance, just something kind of clicked. And it was also my determination and hard work ethic that just, I was always a driven person. So I think that's kind of a natural characteristic of some dancers, is we're just kind of those naturally driven individuals, especially when it comes to something we're really passionate about and we love. Where I was in my life, I was kind of, I had like a, I guess you'd say a normal family. I wasn't, you know, I had two big brothers who were overprotective. I had a dad who wore suits to work, and I rode horses, and you know, this sort of things. So ballet was like the next thing, typical thing for a girl to do. Well, I remember feeling like when I moved away from home at 14, that was it. This is what I was going to do the rest of my life. And I was training at Virginia School of the Arts in Lynchburg, Virginia, which is no longer here. It's a lot like the North Carolina School of the Arts. You've heard of it, or you know, something like that. So, living, you know, away from home, boarding school, only going to real school till noon, because why do you go to real school anyway, right? You just want to dance. And we were training 6-7 hours a day, easy, you know, with all the technique classes and then rehearsals on the weekends. I was studying with Jean-Pierre Bosman from the Royal Ballet. He danced with Margot Fonteyn and Rudolph Nureyev. He was very good friends with them, and he was like, "You're going to be next. You are the next Margot." And of course, you tell a young dancer that, they're just like, "I'll do whatever you want." And I remember Petra saying, "Okay, well, are you willing to sacrifice part of your life? Because there may come a time in your life where it might be hard on your body. You know, are you willing to have a hip replacement by the age of 30? And I'm like, yes. That's a ridiculous question. You know, you ask a dancer that, we're like, yeah, of course. Anyone else in the world, they're like, why do you do that to yourselves? They just don't understand. So I did, I pushed, and it came to the spring of 1994. I was in Swan Lake, and I was also I had little swans, you know, and then I had, you know, big swan understudy parts. And I remember the night before the show, this was April 1994, the night before this performance, one of the lead swans got a stress fracture in her ankle. So she couldn't rehearse, she couldn't go on. So I said, okay, so I gotta remember all those parts, and I gotta remember all my parts, and I remember practicing all day long instead of resting before that show. Because I really felt like something was important about that night. My dad was gonna be in the front row. I just felt like somehow this was my chance, maybe to prove to myself that I was more than just an understudy. But whatever it was, it drove me, and I remember that being one of the best shows of my life. And you know that feeling you get on stage when it's like the world fades away, and it's just you and your body and the music? Well, that's what it was like that night. But I really, really wish that I would have paid closer attention, because it was my last show. Unfortunately, when I woke up the next day, I couldn't move. I was in severe back pain. They, you know, rushed me to the emergency doctor that they had on staff, and they said, you know, you need to go to an orthopedic doctor, go to the best, go to Washington, D.C. So they sent me up there, and they did an MRI of my spine, and I remember the doctor telling me, you have degenerative disc disease. You have arthritis in your spine. You have 3 herniated discs in your lumbar. But you're never gonna dance again. And I remember in that appointment really feeling like something inside of me broke. And it's never gone back. And you know, I had to go move back home and pack up my dorm room, say goodbye to my roommates, which I don't remember doing. I think I blocked it all out because it was too painful. And I went back to normal life. A non-dancing dancer is not always a fun person to be around, okay? So it's kind of like going through artistic withdrawal, and I'm saying this body that was born to move couldn't move. They put a brace on me to heal the spinal injury, and it was like from here down to here, and it had a big Velcro strap, and I remember going to like regular high school, and I was a novelty. I was just like, oh, you're different. You've been away from home? Fascinating. So there was always lots of questions, and it was really hard to blend in when you weigh like 30 pounds less than everyone around you, and it's not because you did it on purpose, it's just because you're like a professional athlete, and people like to comment about that. And in a lot of ways, I just kind of packed it all in beside myself, shoved it down, and moved on with my life. even if I didn't really want to be alive anymore because of all of that pain. A lot of my mental health conditions actually came to the surface at that point. We won't have time to get into those today, but that was a big part. Having a traumatic event in your life, it could be a physical injury, it could be a failing relationship, it could be a move, and that has an impact not only on your physical body, but on your emotional body and our spiritual selves and our mental selves. So when we look at ourselves as dancers, we have all of those different parts and those journeys we take with us. So the things that have happened to us in our lives sometimes live inside our bodies, if that makes sense. So that pain I took with me. And I decided, actually it wasn't me, I found out after a while, this voice inside my head told me that if I could just stay thin, I could just keep my dancer body, then I could stay happy, and I could stay successful, and I could keep my dad's attention. And all this stuff was connected to me as a dancer, because what happened was, is I wasn't just dancing. I was a dancer, so there was nothing else outside of that for me to cling on to. So here I was, a 17-year-old girl with no identity, no self-esteem, and no direction. So I became lost. And I trusted that eating disorder voice because it promised me acceptance. It promised me a place to fit in. It promised me that I could remain whole if I just did what it said. And I didn't realize then that it was all a lie. And it was actually part genetic, part chemical in my brain. My brain did a really good job of creating something to protect itself, so it didn't have to deal with the traumatic event. So when somebody goes through like PTSD, they have a traumatic event happen, their brain actually changes, okay? And they start to maybe develop behaviors, doing weird things. So for me, it was the obsession with my weight, controlling of food. I thought the first lie was that the eating disorder was about food. The eating disorder was about my weight. The eating disorder was that Amy just wants to be skinny. That's all it is. She just needs to let that go. That was the complete opposite of what it was really about. And I think that's why I stayed sick for 18 years, is because I didn't want to let go of the thing that I thought saved me at the time. I had to get to the point in my life where I realized that that was my enemy and not my friend. And the biggest thing of all was accepting that it wasn't my injury that kept me from dancing. It was my eating disorder. Because it would never even, I couldn't even listen to classical music without having a panic attack. I did some therapy where rapid eye movement, where you can actually go inside your brain and reprocess trauma. I remember seeing hallways vividly, all of a sudden, out of the building that we used to dance in, that I'd forgotten all about. So when we have something happen to us, and this is something you can relate when you're talking with someone, there may be those things going on inside of them that they're not connected with, that may be causing some of this fear or this obsession to focus, to ruminate, to focus on the thing that's more surface level, like I can control what I look like, but I can't control if people are going to accept me. See, I felt like life was out of control. A lot of people who start to feel that way cling to something tangible, right? I mean, it makes sense. We want to cling to something to have some way of knowing, and I think part of what I had as a dancer that made me so successful was what made me so successful at recovery. Because every single dancer has the determination and the dedication and the commitment. It's like our traits that we have in our craft, right? And so when I turned all of that energy into like my obsession with my body and everything, and turned it into recovery, it was like I was unstoppable. I'm like, no, Ed, shut up. You're a liar. And when I started separating me from that voice, it was like, I have a voice. I get to say who I'm going to be. And I'm not going to spend the rest of my life as a former dancer who hurt herself. No, I get to choose who I'm going to be. So when I recovered in about, I don't know, I'd say 2011 was this really important time where I was sitting with my therapist and she told me, it's time to really go back and deal with this. And then when I opened up my dance box and I started grieving through some of those things, and I brought some of those shoes with me today, I just kind of had this voice in my head that says, I want other dancers to know that they don't have to dance through this alone. This is hard, real challenges that every dancer faces in their life or in their career. Being in front of the mirror all the time, having that pressure to look a certain way, having, especially in ballet, how there's a line to everything, and so there's a line to everything, and if anything interrupts that line, it's not perfect, right? So, and if it happens to be the bulge of the hip just slightly, and this was just me, I don't know if you relate to this, then that had to go. Because and it was that perfectionistic thing, and there was no room for for diversity. And so I decided right then and there, this is what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna go back. I can't be a professional dancer. I'm too old. So I want to teach dancers, how to inspire them to love and care for their bodies. Teach people what eating disorders really are, which are not obsession with writing rituals. That's a symptom of an eating disorder. And also to help dancers talk and bring it up with other dancers. Because it's like almost like an elephant in the room sometimes, a little bit. And those are scary words. I mean, if you think about it, eating disorder is like, ugh, we don't want to talk about that, And I don't blame anybody for kind of being resistant to that. But I can say that when we start bringing something out in the open, it becomes less scary, right? So one of the things the first thing I would think of, if you are looking for maybe starting a conversation with someone, what are the things, let's start with here, what were the things that you would say would prompt you to want to have that conversation with someone? Are there signs you're seeing? Are they saying things? And what are those things?
Like being upset with body image and saying like I just don't feel like, I don't know specifics.
So they're maybe
but
saying, maybe comments?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Okay, what else do you would see and you'd be like, I want to have a conversation?
I heard like, no, I can't eat that. No.
Okay.
Maybe like physically, you see a change.
Okay.
Or it's like
Sometimes you can see it physical.
smaller. Yeah.
Yeah. Anything else?
If they're like really tired all the time or just kind of like sad.
Yeah. But sometimes people's affect, the way they hold their face, can kind of change. Sometimes we can see it in their eyes. They a little hollow. So those are some physical. So you have the verbal clues that might be, making those comments of having to lose more weight, or I'm not allowed to, because there's a lot of rules to an eating disorder. You gotta follow the rules. So those could be clues.
Also, maybe if they aren't as talkative, they're kind of like drawing into themselves.
They kind of withdrew a little bit,
Yeah.
isolate.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's definitely things that you're gonna pick up on. So the first thing that I would say is that you first determine what is your relationship with that person. So if you're gonna it's gonna be a different kind of conversation. If you are more friends with them, a little bit closer to them, you're probably gonna start a conversation differently than if they're an acquaintance at dance, right? So I always try to encourage people to use I statements when they have a friend that might be doing anything really. Always coming out of a place of, I've noticed that you have said this and this and this, and I'm worried about you because. And where would you have a really important personal conversation with someone? Like, where do you think that would take place for you, if you had to have one? At their home, or yeah. I mean, so like if it's a close friend, you'll probably go somewhere where you guys are comfortable with, or if so you want to make sure there's time around that too, and not being afraid to say, hey, I've noticed that you've been looking a lot more tired and drawn out, and I'm worried about you. Is there anything wrong? And if you feel comfortable, I'd like for you to be able to share that with me if it is. And they might say, I've been really worried about my weight lately. They might be very open about it. I'm really worried about my weight. It really upsets me. It's it's really getting me down, or I'm feeling really frustrated about this. And it's okay to tell someone those affirmations to encourage them, even if they might always not get in, right? So the same things is like, well, I see value in you and your dancing, and I know from my perspective, you may not see it, but I can see how amazing you are, and I really want to do whatever I can to help support you. Is there, do you want to, or would you be open to talking to a dietitian? Would you be open to, going on to this, because there's a recovery app that I can give you. And so it's very non-threatening. They don't have to go call someone. They don't even have to go to an appointment. They just log on to the app, and it gives them encouragement. They can log their thoughts and their feelings. Remember, with eating disorders, it's not the issue that they're struggling with is not the issue. Okay? There's something going on in that person's life. What happens with eating disorders is that the I feel fat becomes this prominent statement or thought, and it kind of keeps running through your head. Has anyone ever felt fat? Yeah, I feel fat. I feel fat, and just at all different random times. And it used to be more of a script, but now I don't actually hear that anymore. But my therapist taught me that, well, fat isn't a feeling. Okay, so if fat's not a feeling, what are you feeling? And I was like, damn it. You mean to tell me, now I gotta identify this thing, okay? The majority of the time for me, it was I'm feeling angry. I was angry about something. And I remember I would use food as feelings and feelings for food. So I would, in order to feel my feelings, I would purge. This might not make sense, but this is what it was. I'd purge to get rid of my feelings. I had to empty myself. It was not the food that was coming out, it was my emotions and my pain. And also, your physical body produces a chemical when you vomit to make you feel better. It's kind of like the whole protective thing. You cut yourself, your body begins to heal itself. So that also made me feel better. But it was extremely destructive. You could see scars on my hand, my teeth. I was extremely weak. It's a very, 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 very dangerous thing to be doing. With your electrolytes and your heart and there's so much stuff that goes on with fluids in your body. You see someone, you hear someone doing that, they need help. That is not a bad habit. It is very dangerous. And what they're probably doing is trying to deal with something. Restriction. I remember hating the fact that I needed anything. And I definitely hated the fact that I needed fuel. I don't know what that was about. But I thought if I could go as long as I could without eating, or only eat the number that the eating disorder told me, like it was 200 calories a day, and that was it. That's all I was allowed. And I would be successful if I could do that, and I was a failure if I went over even 1 calorie more. And it was almost like if you think of an abusive person and how they talk to you, oh, you're such a piece of, there's very negative. That was my inner dialogue. And that's a common theme with someone with an eating disorder. Sometimes they have a lot of what's called shame. Shame and guilt are two different things. Guilt is I did bad. Shame is I am bad. So someone with an eating disorder actually feels like they deserve this. And sometimes when you get to the point of malnutrition, you're not talking to a person who's able to think. Does that make sense? Because they're so depleted of nutrients. So your job as a friend would not be to talk them out of their feeling fat, because that's not their problem. They're probably feeling isolated and alone. They're probably feeling scared, because I knew I was. Just speaking out of my own experience. In my sickest time, the best things that my friend could say to me were, I am here for you. You're not alone, Amy. You're not alone, I'm here. I can't honestly say I have no idea what you're going through right now. Admit it. Admit you don't know. It's so refreshing when people admit they don't understand, instead of, oh yeah, I totally understand. It's like, no, you don't understand. So just really taking that into consideration, where they may be at emotionally. So that's where you might tread lightly. Ask some probing questions. Well, what happened recently? What happened over the summer? You seem different. What happened? What's going on in your life? take it off food. Well, how much do you weigh? Take it off the numbers, take it away from all that, because that's not really what it is, right? So that is a way to start a conversation, maybe some ways to think where they might be at mentally. Yes?
How do you know where to draw the line to stop bugging, you know?
Mhm.
Because, you know, the faculty here, we have to address it all the time.
Yeah.
And, you know, we don't wanna like annoy people or get in, but we wanna know that we're there to
Yep.
support them, you know? And if there's these feelings of fear and isolation and that sort of thing, it's like, you know, there, like you said, there's so much shame. That's why this room isn't full right now, because there's not anybody in our program that I don't think can escape eating issues and body image issues. We all have it. If you live in this society, if you're a female especially,
Mhm.
and men too, if you're
Absolutely.
here, you're gonna have some issues with it. So how do I know as a faculty when to go, Tara, I'm back, I'm bugging you again, you've lost more weight, you know? I mean, I don't, you said take it away from the weight and stuff, but it's like,
Well, yeah.
you know,
Yeah, I know
there's
what you mean
such
with
shame,
that.
and I've had students that are just like, okay, back off,
Yeah.
you know? And I can't call parents, I can't do that
No.
because their privacy and that sort of
Okay.
thing, but,
Okay.
you know, you get to a point where you're just like, oh my gosh, you know, I mean, I've
Yeah.
given students money because they said, oh, I haven't had money to buy food, you
Mhm.
know, and so it's like, how do you know, like, if you're coming from this place, when are you gonna want me to lay off, or do you want me, even though you're saying no, do you still want me to come to meet you?
I would say you might have to take it on sort of a case-by-case basis. Some of the protective, look at, there's risk factors, what makes a dancer more susceptible to a serious hospitalization, right?
Mhm.
That you can't always see that, but the majority of the time you can see if somebody is critically in danger health-wise. But there are some important.
Is that the come to Jesus moment right there? I mean, does it
You
have
can
to
have
get
it.
so bad?
No, it shouldn't, because here's the thing: is that I was only super skinny when I was dancing. I was like
Right.
5'6.5" and 114.
Mhm.
You know, all completely just natural, whatever. And then I hit puberty and my body changed.
Mhm.
Where was I going with that? Oh, but a lot of times I was super sick with bulimia. I was like an average weight.
Mhm.
Nobody would know. I remember my first inpatient hospital stay. There was girls there who were like completely like, what are you doing here? Rosy cheeks and everything. And they're like, oh no, she almost had a heart attack.
Mhm.
I'm like, are you kidding?
Is that what
So-
caused your spine problems? Eating
No,
disorder?
that was hereditary. There's
that was
degenerative
before,
disc
okay.
disease in my family.
Okay.
And I pushed myself too hard. Overtraining. I'm like another test that's for another day. If you want to hear about overtraining and the detriments of it, and what it does to your hip flexors, we'll get right together. But I would think that the more protective factors that you could put in, see, is this student isolated in all the other places? Do you have any idea if they have any support system at all? Any friends, any brothers, any sisters? Do they have parents in the picture? Do they have a connection to anything else in their life that matters? See, a lot of times with anorexia, bulimia comes depression, loss of interest in things. Eating disorders are psychiatric illnesses, so they actually can be quite dangerous. One thing that we try to be really proactive about is always coming from a place of, I care about you. This isn't about your weight. It's just that's what I happen to see. Your weight, yeah, I think it might be a little low, but I'm worried about how you're doing, and are you doing okay?
Right.
And I don't know how, as an instructor, as the director here, how involved you can get in their battle, but just remember that every time you notice and say, hey, I care about you, and you might not want your help, and I'm kind of feeling like you don't, but I'm not going anywhere.
Yeah.
I really care about you.
Well, and the rest.
And it can be a really, really helpless
Yeah.
place to be. I can only imagine that because of what my family went through watching it and not being able to really do anything.
Yeah. And I think our program here, we have a lot of these guys are colleagues, so
Yeah.
I mean, is it my place to be able to say, hey Tara, can you go talk to Jackie? I'm really worried about her. Can
Take
I
a
say
team
that?
approach. Absolutely.
Can I say that? Can I
Well,
say
I
I'm
think
worried about
as
her?
long as it's as long as it is done, in a way that's not gossipy, you're really seriously. This is someone's health.
Right. You
I mean,
want
just like any mental health condition. If somebody said, "I'm thinking of suicide," what are you gonna do? Okay, well, eating disorders have the highest rate of suicide of all psychiatric illnesses combined. They are the most deadly. So if you suspect anyone may be struggling with a it doesn't even have to be like, wow, that's an eating disorder. There's some things just not right. I'm gonna reach out and say, I don't think something's not right. We're gonna look out for this person. Let's create a group of dancers that knows what to look for. And maybe we ask these sets of questions. Hey, how are you? I've noticed that you've been missing classes. You seem tired, are you all right? You know? Offer to spend time with them. Not even saying anything about the symptoms, just offer to spend time with them. Just offer to do something with them. Because remember, it's not really about their disorder, right? You want to get around that Ed stuff, because Ed is like defensive, very cruel. So she's like, or he is locked in his brain right now, and you don't tell anybody. So you go all the way around it. I was like, okay, cool. Don't even say anything. So let's go for coffee or tea. Don't even say anything about any of that stuff. Just build rapport. Yes?
Did you get the term Ed from Jesse Schaefer?
No. Ed actually is used in the treatment community.
Yeah, it is. It's like a term, I feel like, kind of.
Oh, it is a term that they use in the treatment community to shorten eating disorders. And she did start the idea of divorcing or having an unhealthy relationship, and looking it as this other thing and not you. Yeah, and it makes such a big difference, because then they're like fighting you. Yes.
Does it ever completely go away, or is it something?
For me, treatment professionals say that you can 100% recover from an eating disorder, but what that looks like, I think, is different for everyone. Because I no longer have to weigh a certain amount to be okay with who I am. I know that my value is not connected with what I look like. I am no longer trying to change my body. I don't look at myself in the mirror and go, oh my God, I love myself. That's not realistic. I don't think that, there's always going to be this tendency to want to check. I still body check. It's still a habit that I'm trying to break. What am I checking for? I don't know. Just check. Just in there, just check. Like something's going to change. But it's, when you've been set free from the rules, from the pain, that it's really seriously like healing from a trauma. But everyone's looks so different, and it takes so long for some people and so short for some and for others. I went in and out. I started in Remuda Ranch Treatment Center in 2001. I got out in after 3 or 4 months of treatment, and then I did 10 years of recovery. In and out of outpatient. Just in and out, because that's why I called my organization Dancing with Ed. I was just dancing with Ed. Oh, you can come back in my life. Don't leave. Okay, come back. In a way, I needed my eating disorder to deal with life, to be honest with you. A lot of the years where I can't handle this on my own, I need my thing, I'm addicted to it in a lot of ways. Some people might compare it to needing a drug. I needed my fix. I remember after I'd eat something, I'd start to shake because I had to get rid of it. I was addicted to that. How do you break that cycle? It's really difficult. That's why you need nutritionists, dietitians, registered dietitians who specialize in eating disorders, who understand food is something entirely different to someone with an eating disorder. And they have some physiological and other things that in their body, their needs are quite different. Any other questions? About conversations, about your role, anything about eating disorders. Okay, some resources for you. So we've got some eating disorder and body image resource packets. Take one and pass it down. On campus, they have a really cool, do you guys know they have an eating disorder treatment team on campus? In the counseling center? I know, shame on them, they're hidden. There is an eating disorder treatment team on campus. Any student can walk in and get free counseling, free dietitians that work specialized with eating disorders. There's also support on campus called the Body Project through the counseling center. And what they do is they have workshops that help people with body image. So if you want to take one of those and pass it down, all on campus, so it makes it really convenient. You can offer a friend, say, hey, you know, I heard of this group, will you go with me? Could be something you could use as a resource. And there's more of these at the counseling center. Let's see, you could even, I have resource catalogs if anyone's interested in like books, research for professionals. There's memoirs written by family members. There's books for teens. There's books for children, friends, loved ones. It's a really great, actually probably one of the best nationwide. So grab a catalog on your way out. And do you want to hear about pointing to recovery really quick? Okay. So the last pair of pointe shoes I ever wore, my mom kept them so I didn't burn them. And I was so angry, and I didn't understand why this, you know, God would give me this great gift and then just rip it away, and it was just, you know, a broken person. All these years later, I remember I was at treatment, and I put the pointe shoes in front of the cross, a lot of my pointe shoes, because I was a real spiritual person. And I expected that to kind of like just, you know, surrender my dream, move on with my life. That sounds good. Surrender my dream, move on with my life, and everything will be fine, and I'll be better. Well, it didn't work that way, because I didn't go back to the beginning and deal with all of it. So about years later, my therapist said, okay, it's time. It's time. You go back. Grieve the loss of your dance, because you never have. And part of that was signing the last shoe I ever wore. I signed it, I chose recovery. And I did that because I was showing my eating disorder that I was no longer going to choose it. Also to empower us dancers to know it is a choice. That you don't have to struggle. I mean, you might struggle, but you don't have to be defeated and lost and feel like you're alone battling this. So I decided to start a project. I signed mine, and I had other dancers sign theirs who have been in recovery or have, you know, support the mission, and I take pictures of them. But what's really interesting, before I even started that, after the cross, I thought I had given away all my pointe shoes. I thought, well, this sucks. About a year into my recovery, I was at an arts festival, and I'm walking through the festival, and I glance over, and I see this black and white photograph of a pile of pointe shoes. And it looked exactly like the pointe shoes I left at the cross. Signed and everything. And God was like, I don't want you to forget. So I'm using this, pointing to recovery, as an inspiration to dancers. That you don't have to dance through this alone. This is not something, again, eating disorders want to be this secretive illness that can take someone's life, but we don't have to let it be that way. And you can create that culture in your studio of this, we talk about this. It's okay to struggle with your weight. It's okay to not like your body. It's human to have those struggles. What makes you a strong person is saying, hey, I need help. That's what makes somebody a strong person. Right? Any other questions? No? All right. Well, then I guess we're finished. I have some business cards for you and some stickers.
Can they seek you out?
Yes, please. I have my card.